Create Art Podcast. Commentary. Detachment. Hello, friend. This is Timothy Chemo Bryan, your head instigator for Create Art Podcast, where I use my over 30 years of experience in the arts and education world to help you tame your inner critic and create more than you consume. So, continuing on with what we've been doing this year so far, and we're halfway through the year, and it's amazing. But we're working with the Kickstart Creativity cards by Bonnie Smith Whitehouse. The links will be in the show notes. And what they are is they're 50 cards that help you with your creativity, give you different kinds of inspiration. 3 types of cards, perspective, action, and intention cards. And right now we're working on the perspective cards. And why am I doing these cards? Well, that's a good question, by the way. I have the best, the smartest listeners of any podcast, in my estimation. But the reason why I'm doing them is my wife got me these cards last holiday season in 2022 in December. And I thought, well, why are you giving me, creativity cards, inspiration cards? Am I not the head instigator for Create Art Podcast? I am, but, each of us could use a little extra in our tool bag. And essentially, it gave me my topics for the entire year for 2023. So, thank you, dear. Thank you so much. And I like these cards because they really get us thinking about different aspects of creativity, and give us great ideas on what to do with our creativity and how to either get it back or just embolden it and strengthen it. So today's card is Detachment. So on the front of the card, it says, Detachment frees us from any resistant fears and anxiety and we experience around our creation efforts. And then it continues on to the front of the card with what you create today may mean something, or it may mean nothing. Detach yourself from the eventual outcome and just make something. Creative people can simply make things and be happy and healthy, especially when they aren't paralyzed by perfectionism or crippling fears of failure. Remember that humans have been making things since the dawn of time, and you are part of that lineage. I like that word. So when I pulled this card out, and you're going to learn a little bit about me here. Well, you learn a little bit about me every week. But when I saw this card, I was like, detachment. Oh, I've heard of that before in Al-Anon, and that's for families of alcoholics. And well, I do have some in my family of blood, not of choice, probably even of choice too. But one of the things I had to learn in Al-Anon was detach with love. And I saw this and I was like, oh, cool. We're going to learn how to detach with love. Well, yeah, we are. But that detaching with love is more focused on you and your attachment to being perfect, to getting everything correct, to getting everything right. I mean, think about it. When we're kids in school, the highest grade was the best. I mean, the valedictorian gets to speak at graduation. No other student does. But the kids that get the highest score, that get as close to perfection as they can, if not hitting perfection, and they get to speak, and the rest of us have to sit there and just nod our heads. So a lot of us are striving for that perfection, even in our artistic lives. And we're forgetting that, some of the most creative things, some of the most inspiring things, some of the most powerful things come from that unconsciousness, come from the quote unquote mistakes that we make. And I really like this because comparing it with what I learned in Al-Anon, I learned that, you know what, I can't control the person that's an alcoholic in my life. And if they're going to do things that are, not right, that's on them. That's not on me. It's not a reflection of me. It's a reflection of them. And I can support them, but until it interferes too much with my life, then I need to go, you know what? I need some time away, or I need to not be here, or whatever it is, whatever detachment means to you. In a situation like that, you do have to stand up for yourself. Now, in an artistic sense, we're going to flip the script a little bit and say that detachment is the problem is our perfectionism, how we want everything to be perfect, how we want to have people receive our work. You can't always control that. And let's say, you died. You really can't control it after you die. And we're all going to die at one point. I hate to be the, bearer of bad news, but we're all going to pass away at one point. And we really, at that point, are not going to be able to control how people receive our work. And some of, years down the road, they may receive it well. It may not age well. We look at All in the Family and Carol O'Connor's character, Archie Bunker. He was a bigot. He did not age well. He would not be good in 2023. Of course, it's a character and whatnot, but we're not going to be able to predict the future as to what is going to be acceptable and what is not going to be acceptable in the future. So since you have no control over that, don't worry about it. Since you don't have control over, being perfect, don't worry about it. Just go do something and let's see what turns out. If it's a failure, if it's a flop, you don't have to show it in public. Although I would say, give it a shot. Somebody might like it. We don't always know what our audience is going to like, and we don't know what our audience is going to like 10 years after we're dead, 20 years after we're dead. So, why try to fortune tell that? That's another thing that I picked up in therapy, trying to fortune tell everything and, have it all planned out, have the entire world planned out according to our 10-year plan. It doesn't work that way. So we need to, remove that barrier. We need to, stop thinking about, oh, it's not perfect. No one's going to enjoy it. You don't know. Just put it out there and see what happens. If nobody likes it, nobody's going to buy it. But somebody might like it. And why rob them of the joy that they could have with the piece of work that you're working on? Give it a shot. If it fails, it fails. You learn something in your failure. You always learn something in your failures. You learn less in your successes, but, the one problem that you could learn in your success is, you think doing it the same way every time is going to be, perfect and going to make you rich or get you a renowned status or what have you. That's not going to happen. That's not going to be the way it is. Eventually people will grow tired of it. You're going to grow tired of it. So be careful with that. Be careful of the whole perfectionism thing, because there's nothing perfect except for your imagination. So go with that. So one of the things that I always like doing and has inspired me to do this podcast is, talk about the words that we use in the artistic world and, really get a good definition for ourselves so we know what we're talking about, and for our audience so that way they know what we're talking about. If we have a common definition of words that we use, then it's a lot easier to understand. So I always turn back to Merriam-Webster's dictionary for definitions of these words. And detachment, not a huge fan of the definition, but, we'll give it a shot. The dispatch of a body of troops or part of a fleet from a main body for a special mission or service. Okay, very military. A permanently organized separate unit, usually smaller than a platoon and of special composition. Oh my gosh, I think Merriam-Webster was really Army focused that day. And then indifference to worldly concerns. Freedom from bias or prejudice. Bingo! There we are. That's what we want. Indifference to worldly concerns. That's not saying that, you're not paying attention to your audience. Yeah, you do need to, take in what your audience, if they're communicating with you, hey, go with it. Fantastic. But you can't guess what they're going to like and what they're not going to like. You can guess. Let me take that back. You can guess as much as you want. You can do the research on what they want. And hopefully they're being truthful and letting you know what they want. But, sometimes you just got to go create something and, let the chips fall where they may. And sometimes you got to create the audience for what you're creating. So that's going to be a lot of work. But I know you're up to it. Because I'm up to it, I know you're up to it. So let's go into our challenges here today. Recall your ancestors. Were they gardeners, tinkerers, storytellers? How might you lessen any fears or anxieties about end results by taking a cue from the past and just making things become a central part of your everyday life? And this is, going to jump into a little bit of that, our old friend imposter syndrome. If you're doing something every day, then you're not an imposter. If you try something every day, you're going to be, that's practice. That's getting yourself better. Maybe it's, something that you're not going to show the public. That's okay. But try to create something every day that you can. With some people's work lives and family lives, that's going to be impossible. Gotcha. Understood. Maybe every other day, maybe once a week, you go create something. But when that imposter syndrome, and it affects me too, it tries to get me. That inner critic tries to get me every so often. But then I remind my inner critic, you know what? Every week I've put out an episode of this podcast this year. I put out an episode at least once a week. In April was National Poetry Writing Month. And did I hit all 30 days in that month? No, but I created some really cool stuff. Life happens, I've got a busy family. I've got a full-time job. I've got a very active family, and I know I need to be more active for my health and for my fitness. But, just try to create something every day or every week. And that's really then you can take that to your inner critic. You can take that to your imposter syndrome and go, at least I'm trying. A lot of people on this earth are not even trying. So, and they're in a better position. They have more time than I do. So there you go. You can, punch your inner critic right in the nose with that one, or your imposter syndrome. You can give it a good gut punch there. All right, so the next challenge is take an inventory of our home or workspace. Consider its contents as artifacts that either encourage or suppress creative impulses. Remove things that could censor, paralyze, or stifle. Add items that embolden and nurture. So I'm looking around, and stuff that could stifle and censor my stuff. I'm one that I don't like to censor anything. So, even my kids, even though they're young, on occasion I've, dropped the F-bomb. I've said some words that probably are, most people would say inappropriate, but you know what? My kids are going to hear them anyways. So better they hear them from me than from somebody else. But they know how to be respectful and not say those words in front of guests and company. But, looking around the office here, you want to, your workspace where you're creating it, you want to have stuff that doesn't distract you, doesn't stop you. You want things that encourage you. Like right in front of me right now, I'm looking at a cross stitch that my wife did that says podcast. I think that's awesome. And, she did like 3 of them that all say podcast. And I have that right, on the wall that, that is facing me while I'm looking at my computer and while I'm, talking into this microphone. That's the way to be. Whatever discipline that you practice, get that up on your wall, get that in front of you. So that way, it reminds you of why you're here, why you're doing what you're doing. And, anything that is makes you go, man, I wish I could, paint like that, or, I could never create that. I have a picture of the Gates of Hell by Rodin, which is a wonderful sculpture. I look at that and I get inspired by it. I don't go, man, I'll never be able to, create a sculpture that looks like that. I just look at that for inspiration. I just look at that to go, wow, humans are pretty remarkable in what we can create. So be careful what you're putting up on your walls. Don't try to compare yourself to it, but make sure it's stuff that it inspires you, it encourages you, and you're not trying to measure yourself against what somebody else did. It was a different time. The times that Rodin lived and I lived, way different times, different circumstances. There's a lot of stuff about his life that I'm glad I don't have in my life. So, I can appreciate his work and go, yeah, that's really cool. I'm glad he made it because it's encouraging to me. It's inspiring to me. Let that be what hangs on your wall. Not, man, I'll never be able to make something like that. You never know. Give it a shot. All right. So the last challenge is reflect on how to detach yourself from people or in situations that might inhibit creativity. Furthermore, detach yourself from your assumption about how others will receive your work. With, Al-Anon and all that kind of stuff, the detachment was, you got to keep yourself healthy. You got to keep yourself, going and strong and nourished and, emotionally safe and all that kind of stuff. So you might have to detach yourself from people. And I've had to detach myself from people that are in that situation. And initially I did feel guilty about it, but for my mental health, in order to do what I do, in order to give you these weekly podcasts, and I do, other podcasts as well. But in order for me to have the strength, the emotional fortitude to do that, there's some people I can't be around. And it doesn't mean I don't love them, but what it means is that they are not healthy for me to be around. At certain points in my life, they were definitely not healthy for me to be around. And I had to detach myself. I had to get myself out of their drama and put myself in my own drama. But sometimes you're going to find that you need to detach yourself from people. If you're in a writing group or a painting group, and there's one person there that is super good, and everyone's like, "Oh, I want to be like that person there because they're super good at it." And let's say that person is a real jerk because they look at your work and they downgrade and they go, "Oh, that's so esoteric. I don't know if anyone's going to understand that." That's a person you need to stay away from, because they are. I'm not saying that they should say everything is beautiful. They should give thoughtful criticism. But if they're not giving thoughtful criticism, if they're trying to get you to do it in their style, in the way that they think is beautiful, you're never going to get anywhere, because then you're going to be viewed as a person in the style of that person. So don't do that to yourself. You should be in a group that encourages you, that lifts you up, that lets you know, hey, yeah, what you did there did kind of stink a little bit, or I didn't understand it. People that are mindful of your emotions and how what they're going to say comes across. But I don't want them to sugarcoat it, and I'm not going to sugarcoat you, and I don't want you to sugarcoat me. If I make something that it sounds like crap, looks like crap, I want you to tell me, hey, I didn't understand it. It looked like crap to me, but maybe you can explain it to me better. Bringing out clarity should be the goal. Not, make it look like I think it should look. So yeah, that's detachment in a just about 20-minute nutshell there for you. So I hope you got something out of that. I got something out of it doubly, with my experience with Al-Anon and my experience being an artist. It really struck home for me. So I really enjoyed it. And you can probably hear my kids in the background at this point. I'm not going to clean that up because that's just, what goes on here at Casa de Brian. So, perfection is something that we don't need to go after. Continual improvement, sure, but not perfection. Well, that was today's card. I appreciate you, taking a listen to this podcast, and I really appreciate the time that you put into it. And I hope you appreciate the time that I put into it. I do want to ask you a slight favor. If you got any benefit out of this, I'd ask you to go ahead and share it with a friend. Whatever app you're using, if you're on my website, go ahead and give them the website. If you're, using an app, share it through your app. There's lots of different ways, lots of different apps out there. So I'm not going to go through them all. But yeah, go ahead and share it with a friend. I don't mind. Don't mind at all. The other thing I'd like to ask of you is that if you have something going on in your neck of the woods, or if you have, a piece of art that you're working on that I can help you out with, or if you want to get your work out there to other people, I'd be happy to interview you on this show. You can email me, timothy@createartpodcast.com. And I'd be happy to get back with you and talk about it and see what we can do about that. The last thing I'm going to ask of you, and I know I'm asking a ton, and I apologize for that, but could you go ahead and email me and let me know what would make this a 5-star podcast in your eyes? I'd like to know about that. You can, a lot of the apps out there, you can comment right there on the app and leave your review or all that. And by all means, go ahead and do that. Even if it's not a 5-star, if it's a 4-star, if it's a 1-star, go ahead and do that. But what I would ask you to do, please, is to go ahead and email me. Same email address, timothy@createartpodcast.com. And let me know what's going to make this a 5-star podcast for you. Now I'm going to release you to the rest of your day. I hope this was enjoyable for you. I know it was enjoyable for me. So go out there. Tame that inner critic. Create more than you consume. And go out there and make some art for somebody you love, yourself. I'll talk to you next time.